Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's David Palmer and Leo King. We're at UAC 2018, and I'm so happy to have Gemini Brett here. I really enjoy this guy, and I'm super stoked to show you guys what he's all about. So how's it going, man?
It's going really well.
Yeah,
like consumed with information, but that's how I like it.
So tell me, how'd you get the name Gemini Brett?
Gemini Brett, because you know my sun sign Scorpio.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, common question. Well, my moon and my ascendant are Gemini.
Cool.
And where I first began my study is the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School.
Oh.
And they put a lot of focus on the moon and the ascendant. And actually in my study of traditional astrology, especially because I'm born at night and they say the moon is my sect light, and it's so much about the ascendant, right? The hour marker, the oiox, like so many different terms. It's actually, the horoscopus is the ascendant.
Yeah.
So that all plays. So I was trying to like reduce the attention of sun sign as the only being in astrology.
Right.
But then I realized later I was just perpetuating the rap because I'm like doing Scorpio, like hiding my Scorpio and living a Gemini double life, right?
It's kind of cool, actually.
Backfired on me, yeah. But it all makes sense. And I like to also speak, I call myself a storyteller. And I like to speak through that kind of Gemini, trickster, mercurial way. That's how I like to share my information, so it's a fit. And it just stuck.
No, it's really cool, and you have a really good vibe on camera, and the way that you talk about astrology, it comes across very clear, very concise, and it's very, very easy to take in, and that's why I really enjoyed it, because I've seen a lot of your videos.
Right on.
And they're really positive, and they're really clear, and you've got a lot of intellectual aspects, which I could see with the Gemini, but you know how to really just hit people, too, with that Scorpio, really hard, like, and make them like really go, oh wow, I got to process this for a second.
The arts of the chart start in the heart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's where it really matters. And I'm such a student, and I know that it's an endless study. I'll never learn it all, but I can get trapped in like, here's the rules. Let me delineate the chart and get so scientific that the point of the thing, which is to know and grow and heal and feel, gets lost, right?
Right.
So finding that balance too of working with the sacred science, but being in the heart and being in the body, that's what's really become so important to me, because my main devotion to astrology is returning the nature piece, like reconnecting the chart to the living sky and helping astrologers learn that looking down at these charts and looking into the heart and the soul, yes, but let's also look up and honor the sky and how it works and reconnect to the proofs of the equations we use, and the roots of the rules we use are actually from nature, you know?
So whenever you started getting into astrology, and it really kind of probably reached a point to where it hit like kind of a, it overtook your life, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up being in the body. What was that experience like for you? Did it actually take you kind of out of body for a long time, and then it kind of was a period of maybe having to come back into it? Or how was that experience for you?
Well, there were previous mystical happenings in my life that had definitely taken me out of the body, and I had been practicing in some shamanic work for a couple years that were helping me to return. And astrology is super new for me. It was late 2012.
Okay,
There was a total solar eclipse on my north node, and I had my first reading a couple days later.
Is that the May 21st one?
No, it was November 13th, 2012.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The north node Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I went down to Peru after I went to Machu Picchu for like the end of the world.
Gotcha.
Right, in 2012. I wanted to be somewhere like cool for whatever that was going to be. And I had this experience with Jupiter in the jungles of Peru, and basically got my marching orders.
Really?
Either a total psychotic break, or an experience where I was asking these questions of Jupiter out loud. I introduced myself, and then I heard "Sit down, boy." And it was like this 4-hour download that ended with "Now go spread the word." And I was like, cool. So I got home, and I mean, you know how it is with astrology. It's just like you get the bug.
Yeah, you get the bug, and then it's like it takes over you in a weird way.
Totally, and it's us giving permission to it, right? And so we have to be centered and grounded to utilize this information. So much is coming in through the channel.
Yeah.
But then the strange thing for me, like I'm such a sky astrologer. I get outside. I want to see where the sun is setting and watch its course during the year.
Yeah.
I work with my shadow, like not just spiritually, but like literally, like a sundial to see which house the sun's in. You know
it's like Peter Pan, dude.
It's some Peter Pan shit.
I know, it is.
But it's crazy because while I'm looking up and engaging with the sky, it really helps me be an earthling. It really helps me ground and know where I am. So astrology has not actually like taken me out of the body, but it's what's helping me come in.
That's a great point, especially about looking up at the sky, because it's interesting. A lot of people, especially, they might look at their charts, but then, you know, I'll have fun with them and I'll be like, do you know what planet that is right there? And they'll be like, I don't know, that's a star. No, that's a planet right there. Right. But you're right about, it gives you kind of a comfort when you actually know where you're at and know where everything is. And then, especially the more you go outside, and it's like very predictable now because you know astrology and you know the rotation of the planets and you know where it's going to be and you know what time it's setting. It's just it helps a lot.
But you know the trip is I'll go outside knowing what I'm looking for, right? And then I'm shocked anyway. Yeah. Every time it's just like, damn. I mean, astrology is the same way. Yeah. We're looking at these things, we see the energies that are coming by, and then when it happens, it's like, well, this is real, you know? Like, so last night I was trying to find the hidden Leo King party, and we came out a little too late. You know, we were following the treasure map, so I wanted to get to the show, and there was Moon, right? Moon was in Scorpio last night. And where are the nodes right now?
They're in Leo and Aquarius.
And so what's this mean about Scorpio? And we can say all these things about the correspondences and the astrology and get into the skip steps, and but you know the thing it means is that the moon is hella high for Scorpio. It's at the bending. Yeah. And so you could see last night Jupiter, and you could see Spica, and they're right on the sun's path on the ecliptic plane, and Moon was up here. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so to have that physical experience and to witness and receive the reflections, this is what Moon does, of that intellectual quest, it just gives us time to integrate these things that we study and then really reconnect to it, because people, I think, are so quick, especially in the attack of rationalist science. People in our community are so quick to say, oh, don't worry about it, astrology is just a symbolic language. But astrology is the poetic breath of nature. It is. You know, and connecting in nature really helps us reconnect to the ancient ones. So like before this stuff was being written down.
Oh, I truly agree with you on that. It's interesting that you bring up especially like what's going on right now in astrology and how it is more than, of course, just like a scientific study, or like the breath of life, how you describe it is like one of the best analogies I've ever heard, actually, because I think that there's this really weird tipping point in astrology, and I think a lot of it comes to your 2012 experience, because even in my life, I mean, I was doing astrology a little bit before, but it was 2012 and I got the same message. And mine was the other eclipse, the Gemini one, that one.
Yeah, that was nuts for me too.
That one was when I started doing videos and all that stuff. So it was weird that to correlate that you got the same message in the same year. And ever since that point, that year, especially going, whether you look in the Mayan calendars or just if you look at what was going on astrologically with those eclipses and the Venus retrograde that year that we're not going to see for another couple hundred, you know, 100 some years. So it's like there's these really, well, the eclipse of the Venus and the sun. There's these gnarly things that since that point have been taking astrology where we haven't kind of seen it before, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, could we just make up a date? Could we say, oh, it's going to be July 17th, you know, 2023, and that's the end of some strange calendar, and then publicize the shit out of it and make a blockbuster film. You know, the 2012 film was not that hot, but it did okay, you know. I didn't watch it. And then just get people amped up, and if enough people are tuned in, then something's going to happen. So we could say this about 2012, that it was just that kind of created phenomena, and did anything happen? I mean, the sun rose the next day and everything was cool, but there's so many people, and younger people, you know, in our communities and outside of the astrological community, in like the festival world, who are so interested now in tuning in, and people are unfolding in these different ways. And you know, I think the more that you chose to participate with that thing, the more it changed your life. Like my old life died, and I became an astrologer. I never thought I'd be an astrologer. Like I was a denier, you know what I mean? So
what were you before you were an astrologer?
Well, I was a touring musician for about 5 years. Yeah, I play saxophone.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like last life in this life. But that wrapped
up.
And
were you in like bands and orchestras?
Yeah, I was in a band called Fat Mama.
Were you guys like ska or anything?
No, we played a little bit of reggae, but it was kind of like a freaky 70s Miles Davis sounding, like electric jazz thing, like touring on the jam band scene.
Oh, that's sick.
Which was a phenomena, you know, and I was young, and it was a really fun way to spend life. But when that ended, I decided to go back to school because where my talents are more in what like I consider naturally to be the scientific realms. And I got a mechanical engineering degree.
Oh, wow.
But I just never did that. But it really helped kind of establish some of the things that I bring to the astrological community.
Right.
And I studied a lot of astronomy. So I like to say, you know, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. When I was a musician, I wanted to be a star. I studied engineering to help people get there, but it was all preparing.
Exactly.
You know? It was all preparing me for something that I had been raised to deny because what a science class teaches about astrology.
Right, yeah.
But when you say you're outside with astrologers and it's like, check out Mars, super red, and they're like, which one?
Right, yeah.
It's the same thing with most astronomers I meet. You know, because they're used to looking through these huge telescopes way back into space and time.
Yeah.
It's like, these are the lenses I want. You know, I want to reconnect to how this shape is happening here on Earth. So, and to speak about the 2012 things, it's very real because not only was the Mayan calendar looking to this, and I could speak prophecies from the Celtic lands and from Africa and from the Bible or whatever, but most importantly, the solstices are now aligned to the galactic cross.
I know.
And that only happens in this way every 26,000 years. And to me, that's the big thing. Like all these Uranus, Plutos, and you know, Uranus into Taurus, all these different things we're talking, they're amazing, but that's the context that it's held within. And it seems to be what the Mayan calendar was looking towards. And it's very real, and you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, at this June solstice coming up, the sun, the Celts called it the sun on the hand of the high man on Orion's club.
Right.
And that means when the sun sets, galactic center will rise.
Right.
And will reach at midnight, you know what I mean?
Yeah, perfect.
And, and that's like, that didn't happen 50 years ago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we're living in amazing times. The sky tells the story. And my devotion, again, is to bring people back to that connection so that we're not just in our minds and using a bunch of rules and not just like studying the ancient texts to see where they come from, which I'm into.
Right.
But the texts are tricky, those old texts. Like it sounds like people are having a really tough, hard time, you know? But going back before then, like, why is Stonehenge aligned like it is? Why are the pyramids? You know?
There's a lot of mystery, but I think that the timing of life and astrology is the one thing that kind of, even if we might not know the answers, just like using the planets and using the systems that we use of astrology to look back at that gives us an almost weird message from spirit of what it was and what it is. And I think we look in the physical world for the exact answers mentally, like you described so much.
Right.
But I think that the world's going to start to have to learn that maybe we're being spoken to in a whole another way, in a whole nother emotional feel, in a whole nother spiritual way, and the answer comes that way. And you just kind of have to accept it as that. Or I think, you know, that's the problem in society today, is it wants like a hamburger and they want to like see the ketchup on it and like, you know what I mean? Like they want to eat it and then that's like, okay, that was a hamburger, you know? But
how many calories is this Mars
exactly. How many calories is it? So I think that,
well said.
You know, so when it comes to your work, like what is like your main basis of your work right now that you're the most interested in, that you're sharing with people?
Teaching mostly. I mean, I love doing consultations. I do them all the time, and it's always like, I'll post on Facebook, I fucking love my job. And that means I just gave a session that was like amazing, you know what I mean? And I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And as you are, you know, I mean, it's such a rare gift. And so helping people find that love for them, that passion for them, that's like, you know, in a sense, number one. Right. But in this moment, what I'm most fascinated about is teaching. And I just led for about 100 people an online course called Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers.
Gotcha.
And I just decided to recreate it in like kind of a mystery school format that people can take at their own pace. I just launched it today. Speaking of Leo King, with the King star Regulus, the heart of the lion rising.
Right.
And it's You can find it on my website, morethanastrology.com, and it's called Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers.
Yeah, we got it right underneath him right here, right now.
Oh, yeah. Right here. Can I get this shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, what I did is I took these, when I did it live, it was like 6 long, like 2.5-hour lessons with then different tutorials, and it's just too much. So I took it and I'm making these like 10 to 20-minute lessons, just very topic specific. And there's beautiful animations, and we're just taking our pace. But then the lesson ends with a test question, and the answer is the password to the next lesson.
Oh, that's smart.
So you got to ascend through the ranks, and it triggers that video game like need for us. But mostly it's like
you got to beat the boss
mystery
a little
school
bit,
vibe.
get to the next level.
Yeah.
And there is no
you gotta beat the boss.
No saving. There's no just it's like old Mario Brothers. You got to be
totally. And you might be able to like bang your head on the brick and get into the negative world, Mario Brothers style. But yeah, the first 12 lessons are free, so people can go check it out and see if they like it. And I'll be creating it throughout the course of the next couple months. There'll be 72 and all. And I got some writing obligations. I'm doing Astronomy for Astrologers column and Organization for Professional Astrology's magazine.
Oh, cool.
And I'm doing an intensive for them actually in October in Tucson.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, my number one thing is especially astrologers who have been playing for a while. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I love people who have no experience and just taking them out and helping them really integrate, like, this is why the moon is going to be there tomorrow, And most astrologers aren't hip to that stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
And, astrology, it's really 2 things. It's astronomy.
Right.
And then it's correspondences.
Yeah, and I've noticed most people try to do astrology before they do astronomy.
Right.
Like when I was a kid, my grandfather, he had a laser disc, and all those, the laser discs of the planets and the astronomy and all and talking about Voyager 1 and 2 and all these things.
How many times do you watch them?
Infinite. Yeah. Because to me it was amazing. It was like, wow. And that was how I didn't even know nothing about astrology. I went to astronomy first. Yeah. So it actually made astrology so much easier because it was like, oh, I already know the rotations of the planets. I know where they're at in correspondence to the sun. I know, it's like, if you know that stuff, astrology is kind of easy.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much character. It's cool, the more we find out astronomically, like the more the signatures of the planets are confirmed.
Right.
That we've used, like Mercury, the day is longer than the year, you know that?
Yeah, I know.
So half of Mercury is super hot, and half is freezing, like colder than Saturn.
Right.
It's like so Gemini.
It is so.
You know what I mean?
Why? I mean, mythology. In the mythology, it is why it can go from the upper realms to the lower realms, right?
Right.
It's the only planet that's neutral, that literally is the messenger of God, or the messenger of the underworld, you know? That's why I love Mercury. Actually, Mercury's my favorite planet.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, I mean, Uranus, right? We get out there, it's tilted on its side.
Yeah, I know.
Moons are doing this weird, he's rolling like a ball. Like, and we've been calling him a freak since he was discovered, and he just confirms it again and again. So that kind of thing. But here's the trick for me. Astrology is astronomy and its correspondences, and we've taken to the correspondences.
Right.
It's like when the ephemerides were printed a couple of thousand years ago, people didn't have to look up anymore.
Yeah.
And so this beautiful language and this rule set was created, and I love it. But we disconnected ourselves from nature.
Yeah.
And now we just ask the astronomers to print us the tables.
Yeah, exactly.
Something new is discovered, like, please give us the calculations and we'll go heal people with that. Never mind us over here, right? But we've asked for half of our craft to be brought down from the heavens by people who aren't necessarily on a conscious spiritual path, we could say. And so taking back that side of our story, like for the sake of keeping our craft in a place of integrity with the intent of healing, not just I'm trying to figure out what this is to disprove spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So back in the day, well, it's rumored anyway that in the mystery schools before you could study the highest of the lower sciences, and that's astrology, or the highest of the lower mysteries is a more beautiful way to say it.
Right.
You would have to study of the quadrivium.
Ah.
And that's number, and number in time, which is musical harmony.
Right.
Number in space, which is sacred geometry.
Gotcha.
And number in space and time, which is astronomy.
Right, yeah.
And those were the gateways because having that, like my first students, they don't pay me the first lesson they show up. I give them a drawing compass. I'm actually, I'm paying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I invite you to draw 108 circles and then come back. And we're going to talk, like, I want you to do a circle. That is like the root of astrology, and especially the chart, And so let's do that. Then let's talk about the crescent. Then let's talk about the cross. And now let me show you Mercury is the crescent and the circle and the cross. Now that you've met the circle and you've met the crescent, and because when I was given circle as a kid, I was given circle, square, rectangle, triangle, and I was given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You don't get to do one before you do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in trying to find these old mystery traditions without like wearing robes and learning secret handshakes, but tuning into the ancient way so I can return like the direction of our craft for new students and let us start, before the beginning and really be integrative.
No, I think that's beautiful what you're doing, and especially adding that mystery school element to it, I think is really special, because I think in today's astrology world, there's a little bit of the magic that's starting to go away from it, right? And I think it needs to remain that magical power to it and that magical element to it. And for example, when you talk about connecting outside, this last major solar total eclipse that was in America, right? Those weren't astrologers that were going, not even astronomers that were going to watch it happen. It was random people that just wanted to go see a total solar eclipse. So the truth is, and they were sold out the whole line in America, all the hotels, and I wasn't able to go. Did you go?
Yeah.
Oh, lucky.
I found out why they tell us we shouldn't look at one. Because you become a crackhead for it. Like I have to see every total solar eclipse ever. From that. It's unreal, dude. Make sure you go next time. Yeah. 2019 is down in like lower Chile.
Yeah, I saw that.
In Argentina.
You
should go. Yeah, totally. I'm now an eclipse junkie, and there's actually many reasons, but most importantly, man, you're receiving directly some of the mysteries that were kept under wraps by the priesthood. Right. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You get to see that, we know this isn't the scene, but for Earth's eyes and Earth's skies, Moon and the Sun are the same size.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know what I mean? And like the mysteries this is why
that's
students...
That's the craziest mystery of all, is like perfection too. It's not one little... There's nothing off.
Yeah, well, I mean, it changes because Moon gets closer and further away, and Earth gets closer and further. But that can happen.
Yeah, it can happen.
And check it out. So 108. The Moon, on average, is 108 moons from the Earth.
Gotcha.
The Sun is 108 suns from the Earth. The Sun is 108 Earths in diameter.
Interesting.
And that relationship. Sets this up, and we have 108 double stitches on the baseball. We got a baseball game on right here. 108 names of the divine goddess, right? I mean, so many 108s in the mysteries. 108 beads on the mala, and 108 is the atomic weight of silver, which has always been associated with Moon, which is 1080 miles in radius, right? And so these number plays, like. There are riddles, and it tickles the mysteries of creation in that, but to witness it and to see the whole like twilight happening 360 is insane, man.
So in many ways, it's like, to me, when I think about you, you're actually kind of like the keeper of the Vatican vault that we all wish we could go under, and instead you're just giving us all the information that they're never going to give us.
Sweet.
And we've got Gemini Brett to do it for us. Because I have dreams. If I had one wish from Aladdin, I'd just say, can I go into the vault, and not just the front areas of the vault that they maybe let people, the one that they really don't, because I have dreams of like, there's a secret vault deep down there that nobody's allowed to go to.
That's where like the Maya scripts are,
everything is in there.
Well, make sure the second wish is a translator.
That was the other thing I was thinking about. Many translators. I'm going to need a lot of them. We both would.
Right,
But to me, I think like what you're doing in essence, which actually I didn't know this about you, which really excites me about you, and what you do with astrology is like, that's my like, all those little riddles that you talk about, all that stuff, that's the stuff that keeps me in this even more. It's not so much like, you know, sure, I love doing horoscopes and transits and readings and stuff, but it's the stuff that you just hit on right there that
pyramids.
Yeah, just that's the stuff that I'm the most obsessed with, is when I hear more of that, and I get more deep into that stuff. You know?
Yeah, because astrology is one of many mysteries and keys that helps us look beyond the veil.
Yeah.
And see more than you can see with the human eyes.
Right.
And I mean, they say that like the Great Pyramid will answer any question asked, right? Which is this amazing and intriguing riddle in and of itself.
There to ask
Not
yet?
yet.
I want
Not
to go
yet.
bad.
Yeah, I've done some of the Mayan pyramids, and I'll be teaching in Mexico in January.
In Tulum area, or?
We're gonna go. We're starting like near Merida, this like private
okay.
island, this eco island.
Nice.
And I'm gonna do like 3 days there. Maurice Fernandez and Ona Ordoser
cool.
and myself, and then actually 5 days. And then we're gonna go to Uxmal, where there's an amazing, the Pyramid of the Magician. And then I'm gonna tell people to stay on and take them to Chichen Itza and Ekbalom and Kolba, and then get over to Tulum. Yes. And I'm sure Tulum was set up as a Venus morning star, like study.
Yeah.
There's have you been down there?
No, but all my house music buddies and stuff go, because they always do all the great festivals there, and it's just like, I've done, you know, picture-wise, I'm like, oh, I would love to just chill there for a week and go into temples and come back out and go on the beach. And
Leo King TV in Tulum. Yeah, but so on the temples, there's this one deity who's like upside down. And it's clearly, to me, they're symbolizing Venus as a morning star who's getting lower and lower day after day, and they have the perfect setup. And so I'm looking forward, this time I want to make some measurements of like the directions the buildings are facing, and see if I can correlate to that like timing around that temple and see if it was lined to those Venus plays.
Yes, I have another last question for you here. So what's your feeling as an astrologer, how interesting this 2018 is lining up with the Mars retrograde, and then right when we get done with that, we go right into a Venus retrograde. Yeah. Which
and at the nodes.
Yeah, I know. That's what to me is like...
Well, Venus, I should say Venus at the node while Mars is retrograde.
And, and another part to that question is, especially because this Venus retrograde is going to be happening, of course, in Scorpio back into Libra, which happens to be a zone in which Saturn and Pluto happened to come through in the 80s. Yeah. And then when Saturn came through there from 2009 to 2015 in that zone, it kind of was not the most fun spot, if that in spiritual feeling for a lot of people. Yeah. And as on my channel, I preach to people a lot about how, you know, I think a lot of people started watching me because I'm like, this is gnarly when Saturn went through the end of Libra and into Scorpio, and because there was a lot of Pluto-Saturn stuff that had been set from that time, and now finally right after we finish this Venus retrograde to kind of clear the energy, I call it, or like I've been calling it the Swiffer, to kind of clean up all the dead bodies that this has all been done with. Yeah. We move on finally, and Libra and Scorpio are like happy as can be, because it's like no more major outer planet stuff, no more major crazy karmic stuff, the Pluto-Saturn stuff, Jupiter and Venus have kind of swept it all nicely. How do you feel about that?
No, there's so much. I mean, one thing about Libra for Saturn and Pluto is that's where their northern bendings are. So that's where they most separate, like heavenly from the ecliptic plane. Right. And it's where Saturn starts coming back down. Yeah. And they're both crossing in Capricorn, right? They're both coming. And I think actually this is why Saturn's exalted in Libra. Right. Because he's up on high, but it's where he starts coming down. Yeah. So yeah, when other planets align to these places...
Because he can't be the judge, and he would love to be a judge, you know, and say, oh, sorry, you didn't do it, go.
Right, and he also has that heavenly side, that kind of container side, you know, the skin of the solar side. I love to say Saturn is like rubber band, because you gotta like put the work in and make it tense so you can shoot that thing across the room further than you could ever throw it.
That's cool, I like that.
You know what I'm saying? Or that like Saturn-Jupiter, we'll speak about Jupiter as like this benefic blessing, and Saturn like this constrictive curse. But I like to think of a hot air balloon. And Jupiter is the air that lifts you. And Saturn is the fabric that constricts you, but they're in it together to lift you up. You know what I mean? So it feels like this war.
And it is the two biggest planets. So, you know, when you get those two together, I mean, it doesn't even matter if you look at what their characteristics are. It is an explosion of massive amounts of energy.
And there's a rare shift coming up with the two of them because they are bringing their collective cycle, their seed, right, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, to the air signs.
Yeah, out of Earth signs
right,
that they've been.
200 years, except for this 80-81 time.
Right.
When they met in Libra to give us the premonition of this significant shift. It's definitely one of the dawning of the age of Aquarius signatures.
Right. Yeah,
and
it is.
So everything that you've mentioned, it's setting that up.
Yeah.
Like Mars is retrograde in Aquarius. We haven't had one since 1971.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
It's where Mars is closest to the sun.
Yeah.
And so Mars is super fast there. And so it's less likely for Earth to pass Mars by, which is what a retrograde is.
Right.
And that's really important, I think, for people to know. Like we had a long period at the beginning of this year where all the planets were direct.
Right, and that, which was the longest, I don't know, do you know the math?
I've never seen it. It was a good one.
I was going to say, do you know the math? Because I was telling people, I'm like, I've never seen this in my life, and I've looked at a lot of stuff, but also I look back in history and I've never seen, it was from right when Uranus went direct, right?
Yeah.
From January 2nd all
March
the way up
8th
until
was Jupiter's retrograde.
Until Jupiter's retrograde. That was like almost 3 months of just pure.
Yeah.
And then then we're having this Mars-Venus thing this year, right back to back. It's like, I'm looking at 2018 as like the major setup here, you know, because 2019 is going to be really funky, I think, with Pluto-Saturn beginning, and Jupiter, of course, is going to come home, but coming to Capricorn and join Saturn-Pluto. So there's a lot of, you know, because I did the whole math on the last time Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter met in Capricorn, which was 1282.
Yep.
And it was interesting, though, at that time it was Uranus opposing that. Now we're going to have Uranus trine, which was like the Renaissance with Saturn, Pluto in 1517 in Capricorn. So it's kind of interesting. It's like this balance between the Renaissance and the Dark Ages at the same time, kind of clashing in this really weird moment.
Dark Ages is such a silly term for that time too, right?
It is.
But yeah, I mean, it's the tricky thing, as we know in astrology, is it's hard to get a clean experiment.
Yeah.
Because wheels within wheels within wheels within wheels. And so trying to bring all these signatures, they're all different ingredients of the sacred stew.
Yeah.
And we want to know what we're cooking.
Yeah.
So you have to honor each ingredient, you know, but what is the
thing? Really look at it before you just throw it in there, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very importantly. And so let's look at that, because we think of direct and retrograde as, okay, it's forward and backwards. Like Jupiter takes 4 steps forward, he moves 40 degrees forward, and 10 degrees backwards, so 1 step backwards. And, you know, but it's so much more dynamic than that.
Yeah.
They're not on a line.
Right.
They're making these beautiful loops.
Right.
And very importantly, so this is the interior decorators society, I mean Mercury and Venus society when I say that. If a planet is retrograde, you know, actually for all of the planets, that means Earth is closest to that planet at the time, right?
Right.
And besides Mercury and Venus, although it applies anyway, like when all the planets were direct, for the outer planets, it just means they were close to the sun.
Yeah.
Because when sun is opposite them, that means Earth is passing them by. That's the retrograde time, right? So there's something I think we're missing when we disconnect from those laser discs you watched as a kid.
Right.
You know, that we are in a heliocentric solar system. Like astrology is geocentric, and it should be, because we live on Earth. You know, but when we know these things about, like, oh, Mars retrograde, this is going to be Mars as close to Earth as possible.
Yeah.
And you'll see, I mean, dark red, bright, the brightest since 2003, and that was the brightest for like thousands of years or something, you know? But so there's something to me about the proximity.
Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Good gosh, yeah, we're gonna have like the 9/11 eclipse cycles are coming around this next couple years, but anyway, that's just
that's a whole nother place. But
we were just talking about Memorial Day before we started shooting. So there's something about that proximity and that closeness. Now, do you want that with Mars? Are you willing to have that with Mars? Does Mars need a hug? Do you know what I mean? What does Earth receive, or do our energies just mix?
Right.
So with Venus and Mercury, we know that their retrograde period is them coming between Sun and Earth.
Right. Yeah.
And from there, I'll think of like ripples in you throw a pool in a lake, or sorry, a rock in a lake, and you get those ripples. And so here we are as Earth, just surfing our ripple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Mars is the first planet that doesn't come in between Sun and
Right.
Earth,
Well, so when
know.
Venus comes in, like there's an interference pattern or a ripple surf.
Right.
You know, but that's the
like
same
we
thing
saw
happens.
in 2012. I watched that thing.
Yeah,
That was gnarly.
it's crazy. The same thing happens if you're surfing the ripple and you put something on the outside of you, you still get an interference pattern.
Of course.
So there's something with that interference or the intermingling in proximity that really matters here. But it asks us to look inside, it asks us to slow down a bit, it asks us to pay attention.
Right.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that in astrology right now. I think it's always this way.
Right.
But lately there's been a lot in tight periods of time and space that say, look here, like learn this.
Yeah.
And Venus retrograde, like she will rise in Libra as a morning star.
Which
for the
is
first time
I was going to say.
in like hundreds of years.
And without all the I'll be honest, I feel sorry for Libra and Scorpio vibes because they have been through hell and back energetically with the planets over the last 30 years. I mean, and so if you add this, what you're saying, to the fact that the cleaning's been done, it's going to feel in a weird, that's why I'm saying this is such a Renaissance dark, like it's such a, you know, with one end of the spectrum of intensity, there's another extremely beautiful side that's coming at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, she's going to bring a rebirth of the feminine.
Yeah.
And we've been building up to it for a while, and we're still, it's going to be a bit like the star point of Venus and Sun in October will be in Scorpio.
Yeah.
And you know how it is, 8 years, be back there, right? But back there a little bit retrograde.
Yeah.
So in 8 years we'll have another one in Scorpio in 2026.
It will be farther down.
Right. But the next one will be in Libra.
Yeah.
And it's the first time she's been doing. She does 5 star points. You look at the Venus star, check it out. It's amazing stuff. I have a whole thing on YouTube called the 13th Flower.
Some of your, don't you do it? Don't you do some artwork with it?
I'm playing with this. Well, there's an Anna.
I know, but I'm saying don't you have on your other cards, you have a Venus star point one?
There is, yeah. I did a lot of work with the Venus star point, which is called the 13th Flower. You can check it out on YouTube.
Nice.
But the historic patternings, like she's been doing Aries, Scorpio, both traditionally ruled by Mars. Capricorn, the traditional exaltation of Mars. So 3 of her 5 points have been playing in signs.
Not where she likes to be at all.
Right, but it's been what, like the suffrage movement, you know, so much of the beauty of the feminist movement, you know, the 19th Amendment, you know.
Right.
And this time it's like Venus is returning to Libra. The Aries point will go back to Pisces, where Venus is said to be exalted. Right? And that amazing shift, we are starting to receive, and it's been this way for a time, but we are starting to tune in to this blessing of the goddess. And that energy that's returning. There's a wonderful Sabian symbol. It's the shattered bottle of perfume, or the rigid bottle of perfume lies shattered, releasing its fragrance.
What degree is that?
It's early Scorpio. It's where Venus had her last in our lifetime, her last exterior star point in Scorpio on October 23rd, 2014, I want to say. And then there was a solar eclipse.
Right,
2
October
days
23rd
later.
Conjunct the sun. It was the exact solar eclipse conjunct Venus. October 23rd, 2014.
And Pallas Athena was right in that mix. And
that was a gnarly day. I had a really rough day. I'm going to be honest with you. That was not a fun one for me.
I was driving to a wake for a friend in Portland. And every time I touched my door handle, I just saw a car crash. I had a clear vision. It's rare for me. And I was like, all right, I'm not driving. And I ended up watching that eclipse from my backyard in Seattle.
It's West Coast. Yeah, in LA I was watching it. Yeah.
And I went like, no glasses, don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't try that.
But it was amazing. And I just like really, it was the first time in my life where I actually saw what I always knew, that the moon is closer to us than the sun is. And I watched that happen, you know? So anyway.
Yeah, because it wasn't total, but it was enough for us to see partially. It was
totally,
great,
it wasn't even half.
But for me, it was like, and I think it's interesting when you bring up that you touched the handle and that you felt. For me, I was having more psychic stuff coming up where I wasn't even like feeling like I was in reality. It felt like I was just experiencing so much psychic stuff going on in my life.
Yeah.
And actually I was doing a lot of past life regression work at that time, which was like some really dark life stuff for me in death. So I was just like, it wasn't that fun, but that part was beautiful. It is good Scorpio work, yeah.
Yeah, so we had, what, it was
gnarly because it all shifted from Libra to Scorpio in that one day. Yeah. It was like literally just they all together went.
Yeah, and that's where I live. My son's first degree is Scorpio, and like yours is first Leo.
Yeah.
But so that day it's Earth, Moon, Sun, Venus.
Yeah, I know.
Like lined up. You know what I mean?
At zero, like they came in from 29 Libra. Yeah. It was the sun came in, and then Venus and the moon just went shit. It was like that was crazy.
And we see that stuff like now. You and I are like prime candidates for this Uranus Taurus thing, right?
I know, yeah.
Because he's opposite my
that's right.
sun.
It's going to opposite even that eclipse point too.
Squaring your sun.
Yeah. Yep.
And we saw like right when Uranus came in. 14 hours later, Mars into Aquarius.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
To complete the square with our two suns.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then the day Uranus, it's in November 6th, retrogrades back into Aries. Yeah. It's the same day the lunar nodes shift as they do retrograde. Right? So, and just to make a point of this, like we'll have Uranus, Taurus, and the nodes Leo, Aquarius, and the moon comes into Scorpio to complete the square. And the second all three of them shift back to the cardinal signs, there's Venus in Libra.
Yeah.
So it goes from a fixed square to a cardinal square in like hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, we could just do this.
So it's going backwards because it was funny. It went from cardinal to that solar eclipse, right? And then now it's going back. And I even think, the nodes were in Scorpio and Taurus during that eclipse at that time, or maybe they were shifting in 2014 into Leo. No, they were still in Scorpio Taurus. I remember I was like, come on, get out of here.
Get out of here so we can have 4 blood moons in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what came next. Yeah, I mean, that backwards notion, like the precession of the equinoxes, the retrograde motion of the lunar nodes, the retrograde motion of the Venus star, of the Mercuries through the elements, you know? There's so much of that I think brings us balance and helps us center. We're in such a rat race world, and to find like the grace of Earth's pace, to slow down, to find the moment now, it's so difficult. In astrology, it's like everyone wants to talk about 2020. It's like what Ram Dass just wrote a book called Be Here 2.5 years from now. It's like, no, be here now.
Yeah, now, right now.
So how can we utilize this sacred science that does allow us to look ahead, and geniusly as you choose to, and the great astrologers choose to look back, to source how did this work, so we can meet here in the middle, here in the heart, and find stillness, and that's got to be the goal that we're after, you know?
That's a beautiful way to end this. I wanted to say, I think out of all this, there's so many great things, but I think this Venus thing we're talking about in Libra is so important, and how you pointed out how it's been in the star pattern through these Mars-ruled aspects. And then, if I'm correct, Venus, the last time it retrograded was in Virgo into Libra, or Leo, right? And so Venus hates to be in Virgo.
So she did that one, then she just did the Aries back into Pisces.
Oh yeah, that one. But I'm just saying, like, going back, it's like, she really has not been happy, if that makes sense. Like, every place she's been has been like, and it's kind of like a Libra story, kind of like, you know, when it's like lately for them. It's been like, I feel like they've, as sun signs, kind of been like, oh man, I don't really want to be here. Oh man, you know, because I know a lot of Libras in my life. And so I know, and I'm looking at all their lives, and it's interesting that by this end of the year, for them, it's going to be like, they won't even believe it's possible to live a life that they've been waiting for their whole life.
Yeah,
I know that's pretty deep.
Uranus assists with that. I'll leave one more image. So one of the occult symbols for the sun, and you'll see it everywhere, is the clamshell. And if you watch that beautiful sunrise or sunset where the rays do this, that's why. It's really the scallop shell.
Right.
And this is why that beautiful image, that painting, Botticelli, right, of Venus, the birth of Venus, where she's riding from the oceans on the clamshell. It's because Venus's morning star is born into those rays of the sun. And that's going to happen this October in Libra. It's such an amazing homecoming for the goddess, who says balance, peace, evenness,
beauty,
you know?
too, like, because whenever I look at that picture, you know, I'm like,
yeah.
I wish I could be there. You know what I mean? That picture's so beautiful.
Yeah, and let's just say real love will be in fashion again. Anyway, I'm going there. I'm going to be in Cyprus. That's where the myths say that Venus was born.
Really?
So to see her reborn in Libra in October, I'm going out to Cyprus. Ariel Gutman, who's done a ton, she wrote the book on Venus star points. We're going to lead a group together and just go to all the temples of Venus and watch her be reborn. And yeah.
Well, I'm stoked that we were
There's beauty ahead.
Yeah, there is. I know it is.
Yeah.
Especially with all that we talked about. So thanks so much, dude. I
Totally,
really
it's nice
appreciate
to meet you in person.
I know, me too.
It's cool to spend some time.
Yeah, it was cool. You and I could rap for hours about this.
Yes, and let's do more of it. So, more than astrology.com, Sacred Astro, 12 lessons for free. Come play in space, re-nature your astrology.
What's your Facebook?
It used to be Gemini Brett until the Facebook police cracked down on me. And now I'm using my real name, which is Brett Joseph. So you can find me there. Or facebook.com/arts of the chart is my biz page. And where
what's your Instagram? You have an Instagram too?
I do. It's Gemini Brett. You'll find stuff like this there, like coming really soon.
Yeah, because, and I mean, I'd hate to keep you on longer, but do you do all this artwork?
That's Anna Zaharia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Who's my love.
That's right. Okay,
and
gotcha.
we're teaming up on to recreate Arts of the Chart to bring a lot of visual tools. So this shows us the inner signs, the outer signs,
it's beautiful.
the nocturnal and diurnal houses, right? And then in my course, and you'll actually find this on my page, I build this up from a dot to a circle, build the seed of life,
got you.
And then show how the signs come from there. But I do it not only visually, you'll love this, but musically. Because we've got 12 signs on the Wheel of Life and 12 half steps in a musical octave. So I stick Aries at A and Taurus is B flat.
Oh, gotcha.
And then I can play these things.
Right.
And I can play, and I'll do this in sessions all the time. I'm rapping about somebody's aspects and it's not landing, and then I'll just sit at the piano and play the chord. And suddenly, it just opens up, and all these tales come forth,
That's crazy.
Yes, I love the music correlation.
Right.
I love that you bring music at your events. It's so important.
I think it's so important to, if you're going to hit people with this stuff, sometimes it's too much, and then you kind of are like, it's like almost, it's too much for any soul. It doesn't matter where you're at in your evolution, when you process a lot. So I think the music helps it come back up in a nice way, up into your higher self and into your higher vibrational self, and get back into your body with it. And then get back into joy too, and take that information and expel it into joy.
Yeah.
Even if it is kind of a harsh thing sometimes, but it will always come back to joy and turn that into joy, and then it feels like your whole life just goes better with it, or deals with it all better.
Music is the medicine.
Yeah.
All right, well, we better stop.
All right, Joe. Thanks, man.
Thanks,
All right,
man.
brother.